Okay, so it's time to test out the shells we loaded in the last video. I've been shooting the gun a little bit with some factory ammo to get the red dot dialed in a little bit, and also very importantly to check the chronograph. And the chronograph has been giving very, very good readings. It's an overcast day. It's like perfect chronograph conditions. So hopefully we can get all of these fired before the sun starts going down. So just to recap, this is the same load loaded in 4 different styles. I've got it in a 2 3/4 inch with a roll crimp, a 3 inch with a roll crimp, a 3 inch with a 6-point folded crimp, and a 3 inch with a 8-point folded crimp. They're 1.5 ounce loads, so these are probably going to pack a little bit of punch. I'm going to start with the roll crimp, and we'll do the 2 3/4 inch first. Make sure that feeds okay. Yep, looks fine. So let's see what happens. These are pissing hot, so hopefully it doesn't blow my face off. Well, I don't see any barrel bulges. Things are in one piece. Velocity was 1259, which is scooting along pretty good. I don't see anything abnormal on the hull. Let's try another one. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to move on to the 3 inch and make my way through these. I'll track the velocities here on the screen. Not a whole lot interesting to talk about unless I see something weird. That one was 1096. That was a little bit weird. Out of an abundance of caution, I've been checking for barrel obstructions. So far so good, obviously. I think we'll do the 6-point crimp first. Almost forgot to change the target. Okay, there's my first bad reading. I assume it was actually more than 68 feet per second. Good, that one worked. All right, let's get back to the bench. Okay, so these results are awesome. Here's the average velocities and the extreme spreads added at the end. And the factory ammo that I shot before these, I fired 13 of these over the chronograph, got an average of 1190 with an extreme spread of 87. And didn't get any bad chronograph readings. So I was using my Caldwell Ballistic Precision chronograph. When they're working, they work great. When the light's not right, things can get weird. So feeling good about the data. So the highest velocity was the short roll crimp, and the difference was significant. What is that, 112 feet per second. And the highest velocity shot with the 3s was 1145, and that's below the lowest shot we saw with the 2 3/4. I'm trying to be careful with this extremely small sample size. Just trying to see ways it might be lying to us. I'm not really seeing it. And the velocity on the fold crimps was between the 2 roll crimps, and those two were pretty close to one another. So if we had only shot the 3 inch holes, then these results would be about what I expect. We lost some velocity with the roll crimp and didn't see any significant difference between the 6-point and the 8-point crimp. So the most interesting thing that pops out to me is the high velocity on that 2 3/4 inch hole. So I want to talk about what might have caused that. So we were around 1200 feet per second. Is that good or bad? I think it's good. But the problem is in the shotgun world, they tell you that you can't really expect pressure changes to follow velocity changes. I don't know. This was a big test. I'm glad that it's over. I feel better now that it's over. We didn't have an official recipe we were following. This was a charge that looked about correct after looking at 100 other similar recipes. So nothing happened to make me think we were in bad shape. Recoil felt good. These actually recoiled about the same as these heavy target loads. These are 1 1/8 ounce heavy, super handicap heavy target loads. The holes all seem good. We'll look at these here in just a second, but the gun is not patterning well. It's not patterning well with the factory ammo and it didn't pattern well with these. I had the factory full choke in it for this test. I was shooting at 30 yards, which is a weird distance, but the groups weren't staying on the poster board. So I need larger paper. I need to standardize on how I'm going to shoot. You know, am I going to shoot at a 10-inch circle? Count pellets, because that's where we're headed, is counting holes. So I've got the targets from today. Maybe they'll be interesting to look at in a future video, especially I need to run through the chokes and see what the pattern differences look like. That's all for later, so we'll skip by all of it today. So I was able to pick up some components. These are the TPS wads we were using. I was looking for anything weird. You know, like if maybe we didn't get a good seal with our obturating cup, we'd see some sort of gas cutting. I assume that's what it's called. That line there that goes all the way around it is interesting. Here's a new one. Yeah, it's part of the mold. Hopefully you can see it. So on the inside of the cup, a couple of them kept the felt. Or the cork. This is a cork one. Pull that guy out of there. There's the felt under it. That's cool. It's still pretty squishy. All the imprints from the shot. I think they call that setback. So like, you know, when the shot is fired and pressure's building and all of that, the first thing that happens is all of the shot sets back into the cup and gets ready for the wild ride. And you can kind of get an idea of how much it compresses. Looks like this is from one of the 2 3/4 inch shells because I think that was trimmed. But you can tell how far it set back before it started really digging into the plastic. Pretty neat stuff. Let's look at this guy a little bit closer. So this is what was in contact with the shot. I think there's another one that has a, yeah, here's another one. Same deal. And also here you can see, yeah, where the top of the shot column was after setback. I just can't wrap my head around the beginning, especially as it's exiting the hull and then navigating that crazy forcing cone. Yeah, it makes my brain hurt. So I've looked at these a fair bit and haven't come up with anything that jumps out to me as interesting. Here's a figure 8 wad that I'd picked up. So this would have been from one of my squirrel loads in my first shotgun video. So check out that dude. That's one thing I have not seen. Like with the recipes with these TPS wads, I haven't seen anywhere they don't use any fiber or felt or cork base wad at the bottom. But I mean, I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, surely that's the thickest plastic in the whole thing. So all of these as well were picked up off the ground. And even here's one of the overshot cards that I picked up. The overshot cards were about 10 feet in front of the bench, just past the chronograph. And then out about 15 yards, I started finding these felt wads everywhere. They barely seem to have been touched. Probably reused those. There's one that was clearly up against the shot column. Like everything held up. I was, you know, when you're installing these, it's hard to even imagine. It's hard to imagine this surviving and not just coming to pieces, especially the cork. Like, you know, I could rip this in half, no problem. But it made it through that entire shot cycle in one piece. So here's something interesting. So obviously one of the short ones and one of the long ones next to one another. And if you look at where those really deep impressions were made from the shot column, it stops at like the same height. But in the loaded shell, the shot starts out at the end. With these long ones, we had 2 1/4 inch felts at the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. So looking at that, it makes me wonder if they were, you know, compressed into nothingness during the firing cycle. Pretty wild. So okay, why was the 2 3/4 faster? Oh, first of all, somebody asked if you can reload shells after they've been roll crimped. As far as I know, absolutely. I expect to be able to roll crimp these 1 or 2 more times before they need trimmed down and we start over. We'll find out soon. I mean, I'm going to be doing it. So if you'll remember, the full-length shells were skived. Let's grab a new one. There we go. These new Fiocchi holes have got the top part there skived. And then with the shorter ones, you know, the 2 3/4 inch holes, all I did was basically cut that part off. So is it possible that the skived hole made a weaker roll crimp just because of less plastic there, and that's why our velocity was lower. I don't know. Now the ends of the hole definitely look a whole lot different. So this would be skived and this would be unskived. And back to what I was just mentioning, I assume the ones that have not been skived will probably stand up to additional reloads better than the skived ones. We'll find out. I was watching the holes pretty close and didn't see anything, didn't notice anything weird. So what else could have caused our differences? Let's consider the two wad setups. Yeah, I just went to check. This is going to be easy. The short one had one felt and the long one had two felts. We only used the cork with the fold crimps. So is it possible that we lost 112 feet per second just from the one additional felt? All right, so I assume during setback, when some energy is being expended to compress these, I could see it having some effect. That seems like a lot. Or maybe it was a combination of the two. A little bit weaker crimp and twice as much felt to compress. So to me, the obvious next test is to now cut one of these to 2.5 inches, which should allow us to get rid of the felt altogether. We trim our shot cup down so that it's just long enough for the shot, and we see what that does. Do we gain even more velocity? I don't know if that's smart though, because I think every recipe I've seen with these wads uses felt or cork, at least something down there. Grab this one I cut the other day. I don't see why we couldn't run that naked. Like if the figure 8 can handle shot, then this thing ought to as well. So I think I'm pretty much done here. Got a few notes of things I wanted to talk about. The overshot cards that I used with the fold crimps. A couple people mentioned it in the comments. It's all about buffer. A lot of the tungsten loads use buffer. And it's something I'm going to talk about and I'm going to test with and we're going to mess with. If you're not familiar with buffer, it's a filler. It's like these tiny, like impossibly round micro beads that you put in with your shot column and it fills in all the little gaps. So just like we saw inspecting the wads and seeing how the shot set back, I'm thinking in a buffered load that would be much less dramatic. A lot less compressing and rearranging that has to happen during that beginning of the firing sequence, that setback process. That is a huge topic, and I haven't even researched it enough to talk about it yet. But that's 100% the reason why those recipes were calling for overshots under fold crimps. So people have asked about slugs a lot, and saw some questions about like the mini shot shells. As I research and read about roll crimps, a lot of it, the most common usage is for slugs, I think. But watching all this stuff has got me interested. If you watched previous videos, you saw all of those short shells I was practicing my crimps on. No reason why you can't load them as short as you want, as short as your gun can handle, which I guess can be a pretty big problem. And I think somebody mentioned that my Winchester 1300 is good at cycling some of the weird lengths and stuff. I've never messed with them. It should be fun. A whole lot of overlap. If we know how to roll crimp pretty good, then it should all be pretty easy. A lot of people had mentioned that I should be seating my wads on the press. There are a couple points to make on that subject. First of all, these are full-size shot cups. All right, there's no collapsible section like this old figure 8 wad, and most other standard wads have that collapsible section. I believe the standard wad seating procedure is maybe preloading that a little bit or squishing it down a little bit, because like with these shot cups, like there's nothing to compress. So it's not like we're going to get much compression of the actual powder with that little shot charge spread out that large. Like I just can't see there being much compression that could be done with the powder from a full-size shot cup. Now, if you're talking about using it to seat the felt or cork wads in the base of the shot cup, that might work with felt, but with cork, remember that your press uses a hollow tube. That's where your powder and your shot come down. I think it would punch right through cork. I don't think there was any problem with compressing that stuff by hand. A couple people mentioned that it was painful to watch me do those fold crimps, and I agree with you completely. It's just, from what I had read, that crimp starting station where these brand new holes are going to get creased for the first time is where all of the problems could come from. So I just wanted to make sure to get them right. So I did it the painfully slow and deliberate way, and it worked good. So I'll be trying to speed up going forward. So I think that's it. Really good test today. I'm really happy that charge weight I picked, the 36 grains of Blue Dot, seems to have worked okay. Because listen, it's scary. I mean, that's the reason why I wasn't holding the gun today. I kept my left hand back into the safe zone as far as I could and just let the gun do its thing. But we built a little bit of confidence, and hopefully next video we'll build a little bit more. And that's the chaotic process of learning, at least for me. Somebody asked why there's no playlist for these videos, and I'll make one. So by the time you see this, there's a new shotgun playlist, and I'll have the squirrel video in there and then these daily videos. Okay, that's enough for this video. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do tomorrow. I think the smart move would be to stop and build a target stand, a proper patterning target, and track down some big paper and, just get a nice target set up. I haven't checked the weather. I don't know. If I don't want to do that, I'll probably switch over and maybe we'll try to load some 410. Just some basic loads, a little more practice with the mech press, try the smaller roll crimper. I'm not sure. Probably one of those topics. All right, that's it. See you tomorrow.